Hey guys, I was thinking about the Dead or Alive series the other day. Not sure why, it just kind of popped into my head. I wasn't into it when it first came out on the PlayStation. I really thought of it was just the bouncing boob game where everything was about counters. There was no real attacking. I just didn't play it enough to really get into it, I guess. But I really liked DOA 2 on the Dreamcast. Anyway, I was thinking about the common mechanic linking all of these so-called 3D fighting games, and it's basically just the sidestep. Sidestep is the whole big difference here. Going back to Toshinden, through Tekken, DOA, the Soul games, it's the one thing that really makes them 3D. And that's kind of lame, to hinge it just upon the ability to go like this around your opponent. It's like a step or two above the old kind of split foreground and background that you had in some of the older SNK fighting games in Fatal Fury, where you jump back and forth between the two levels of the screen. The pseudo 3D, I guess you might have had actually on the Virtual Boy. Excuse me. Some people say the thing that defines a 3D game is the makeup of the characters, that they're actually 3D models built around the polygons and stuff. But I don't know that really counts. If you look at something like Street Fighter IV, where, yeah, the characters are made of these polygons, but it's not really a 3D game. The most you're going to have is like the hurricane kicks spinning around fireballs and being able to go back and forth in the distance, basically, of a human body. Doesn't really count as a 3D game just because you have 3D characters. It's still basically limited to a 2D left and right combat plane. There's not a lot about its 3D, regardless of the graphics. You can even kind of take it back to something like Killer Instinct, where the characters were originally designed as 3D models, but then flattened into sprites. Which at the time, Killer Instinct was fucking awesome. Really fun game. A little digression here. The best place to play video games in my hometown wasn't the arcade. Sorry, Sonny, you had a great arcade. You really did. But the best place was a 7-Eleven across from the high school. Always had the best games. It had a lot of SNK stuff. Had all the Mortal Kombat games that would come through. Had the 4-player NBA Jam, Killer Instinct, Samurai Showdown. It was just badass 7-Eleven. But Killer Instinct, they were 2D. It didn't matter what the characters actually looked like. It was still a 2D game. So while I can say I prefer 2D fighters, there isn't much difference between a 2D fighter and a 3D fighter for me, really. When you get most of the combat, even in a 3D game, it's still on that one person on the left, one person on the right, 2D. You may be able to sidestep and grab their sides a little bit, but it's shaky. The only successful, I guess, real 3D fighting games that I ever played were the wrestling games. And more than that, I think probably my favorite was Power Stone. Power Stone 1 and 2 on the Dreamcast. Now that was like a true 3D fighting game. Multi-platform, attack from up, down, left, right, anywhere around the characters. I would love to see a new Power Stone if they're looking at revamping Dreamcast games for the 360 and stuff. You brought back like Space Channel 5 Part 2, Sonic Adventure, meh. Choo Choo Rocket, and Power Stone, and I'll be happy. The Evolution series was fun. Again, rambling. Wrestling games, and now I guess you wouldn't include the MMA games, they allow for a true circular motion. The attacks are position, I guess, contextual. If you're behind someone, it is a true behind attack, a side attack from the top rope in a wrestling game, pushing people against the ropes and stuff. Those are a real 3D thing. Everything deals with proximity. You can cross somebody up in Street Fighter, and that doesn't really count as getting behind them. The sidestep and kind of grabbing a side or behind in Soul Calibur and such, it's just not nearly as fluid as what you have in the grappling sort of games. I guess the big difference in what you can do in a 2 or 2.5D game versus a true 3D game does deal with that control scheme. Capcom and SNK style controls are just impractical, if possibly even impossible, to really function well on a 3D plane. A half circle forward in a 3D environment, what does that do to you? How does it spin you around? It doesn't quite work. Do you go from like 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock? Does it go from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock? It's going to be weird. These sort of wrestling games and the true 3D games deal more with button taps and directional taps that, towards the opponent. Back, left, right, up, down, all that sort of stuff. It's not tied to the fluid motions that you see in the 2D fighters, the Capcom and SNK games. What do you guys prefer? My favorite fighting games have traditionally been 2D, the Street Fighter series. And while I know this might be a heresy to some, I never really enjoyed any of the games in the Street Fighter 3 series. No matter what characters they added back, I guess by that point I was just really into Alpha 3. And I just preferred it. I've definitely dipped my toes in the SNK arena. Samurai Showdown, the original, is still probably my favorite. I enjoyed a lot of games in the Fatal Fury franchise. Art of Fighting, not so much. King of Fighters, by that time, I was pretty much into different styles. Games wasn't as much in the fighters as much. Mortal Kombat kind of peaked with Mortal Kombat 2 for me. I had Ultimate MK3 for the SNES, but it's just Mortal Kombat 3 was the tops. I don't think they've got back to that yet. 3D games were always second place. I played the hell out of Soul Edge, Soul Calibur, and Soul Calibur 2, but kind of dropped the series after that. Tekken's, up through Tag, the subject of many a late night of impromptu tournaments and such. I used June. I don't know why, I just found her very easy to use. There was a guy in my freshman dorm who was great, cheap as shit, but he was great with Ganryu, which surprised the hell out of me. He's like, hey, I'm going to beat you with Ganryu. I'm like, no, you're not. And he just stomped my ass every time. And speaking of Tekken, whatever happened to the silly things like the wireframe mode or big head mode? Do they still have things like Alex and Roger? I don't know. Now the best you're going to get are kind of character crossovers like Link in Soul Calibur and I guess Altair or whatever from Assassin's Creed. I want something silly. They put the big head mode in Arkham City. That's a grim and gritty game. If they can put something silly like that in there, bring back something like that. I know they don't need it now, but the PlayStation used to have, loading screen mini games. You could play like Galaga when you're waiting for Ridge Racer or something. Stupid shit. Waste of time. I guess you don't need it now when you can load things to your hard drive. But the fun stuff was fun stuff. Let me know how you guys feel about it. Let me know if you like your 2D, 3D, first person, like the old SEGA boxing game that was kind of head-to-head, or that shitty Kinect fighting game. Pop something down in the comments, positive or negative. Put up a response video. Do whatever you got to do. Until then, you guys all have a good day, and I will see you later. Bye.